The field's done shrinking. It's Becerra-Hilton to November. Everything before today was rehearsal. If you're just joining us, California's 2026 governor's race started as a crowded top two primary to replace term-limited Gavin Newsom. Democrats Xavier Becerra and Tom Steyer and Republican Steve Hilton broke from the pack. Now it's down to Becerra versus Hilton, with Hilton trying to turn affordability, taxes, and regulation into a Republican opening in a very blue state.
This is the California governor's race. Today, the FPPC contributor list goes live. Katie Porter's exit pitch is now on the record. And the one question I want answered: did the money actually back the people who advanced?
NBC's results page confirms it. Becerra and Hilton are through. So let's stop projecting and read the filings. The FPPC top contributors list is finally live for this cycle. For weeks, the only number anyone could cite was that $50.8 million anti-Steyer figure. Now we have actual dollar lines against actual names. That's the test, right? The donors who poured in to bury Steyer, did they pick the finalists or just the loser they hated most?
Here's what eats at me. Steyer made the top three. A self-funding billionaire survived the primary. So much for the clean theory that the billionaires got wiped out. Sure, but his vote share is a number, Sarah. If a guy nobody wanted to fund pulls a real margin, that tells you something about where this electorate actually is on the wealth tax that's on the November ballot.
And now both finalists have to answer it. Becerra on the left flank, Hilton running against taxes entirely. Steyer's number framed the question for both of them.
Does Hilton sign on to a wealth tax, or does he try to kill it? That's a billionaire tax fight in a state with a billionaire who just lost. I want him on the record.
Other artifact worth pulling: Porter's candidate statement, still sitting in the official voter guide. She's out, but the language is right there. Go toe-to-toe with Donald Trump, the whiteboard. And the timing's neat. A fact-check piece landed this week on how official these voter guide statements really are. The state publishes them largely as is, no audit. That's the contrast I keep coming back to. The certified results coming in tonight? Those are the one thing in this whole process that actually gets checked. The candidate pitches never were. Last thing to pull? Planned Parenthood's endorsement language. Reproductive freedom champions. Same vocabulary turns up in the voter guide statements. Now we can line up the endorsement with the platform on paper, with sources.
Good. Less inferring, more filings. The setup's over. November starts with whatever margin Becerra and Hilton actually posted and whether the money saw it coming.
From NBC News.
Two Democrats, former Cabinet Secretary Xavier Becerra and billionaire Tom Steyer, and one Republican, Trump-endorsed commentator Steve Hilton, separated themselves from a large pack that includes Democrats like former Representative Katie Porter, State Superintendent of Public Instruction Tony Thurmond, former Los Angeles Mayor Antonio Villaraigosa, and San Jose Mayor Matt Mahan, as well as Republican Riverside County Sheriff Chad Bianco.
Becerra 28.1, Hilton 24.7, Steyer 22.8, with 98.8% in. That's the number I've been waiting all week for. And look who's sitting at third. A billionaire survived the field. Just not the one the smart money said would. Steyer's at 22.8, and the tech coalition guy isn't even in the conversation.
NBC's near-final count has Becerra ahead of Hilton, with Steyer third. So the November ballot is Democrat versus Republican, and the billionaire who missed it is a Democrat. Tidy, isn't it? And say this out loud on results day. These certified totals are the one number in this whole cycle that actually gets checked. The campaign claims? Not so much.
2.9 between Hilton and Steyer. That's close. A quarter of the vote went red, and another quarter went to a guy nobody could explain.
This one's from Fair Political Practices Commission.
The lists below reflect top contributors as reported by committees that have raised at least $1 million and are primarily formed to support or oppose a state ballot measure or a candidate for state office in the June 2026 primary election.
The FPPC top contributors list is live now, and for the first time, we can put dollar figures on specific candidates instead of leaning on that $50.8 million anti-Steyer number. So, Mahan, $16.7 million in support, more than anyone else tracked.
$16.7 million, the most top contributor money in the field, and he's not on the November ballot. The biggest pile of money in this primary backed a guy who lost.
The state's own finance watchdog confirms it. Mahan outraised the survivors and went home in June.
And look who advanced. Becerra clocks $10.3 million in support on this list. He's behind Mahan, behind Swalwell's $12.7. The money didn't pick the bracket. Voters overrode it.
What I want from this list now is the November read. Whose names show up backing Becerra, because that's the coalition he carries into a two-name race, not the one he ran in June. From California Secretary of State.
Unlike most other Democrats, I refuse donations from corporations and lobbyists. Those special interests and PACs have too much power in Sacramento and are making California unaffordable for the rest of us. I cannot be bought, so you can count on me to bring down your costs, guarantee quality health care, and protect the environment.
So here's Katie Porter in the Certified Voter Guide, whiteboard and all. Go toe-to-toe with Donald Trump. I took on billionaire CEOs. That's the pitch California voters were actually offered in June. And she's out. So this statement is now the cleanest record we have of a campaign that didn't survive the jungle primary.
Right. And read the next line. Unlike most other Democrats, I refuse donations from corporations and lobbyists. She ran hardest against billionaire money, and she's the one who didn't advance. Steyer did. A self-funding billionaire made the bracket, and the anti-billionaire CEO crusader didn't. The voter guide is now the last public record of a pitch the vote rejected.
Which leaves the whiteboard accountability lane open. Either Becerra absorbs it, or Steyer spends November, from the sidelines, explaining why a billionaire gets to carry it.
And there's a wealth tax on the November ballot. Porter would have owned that fight. Now it lands on Steyer's checkbook. I'd love to see his answer. When I open California's official voter guide and a candidate is selling me their case for governor, how much should I trust it? Is anyone actually checking those claims?
The short answer? Almost no one is checking, and that's by design. The SF Chronicle's Bob Egelko reported this month that California's voter guide gives candidates wide leeway in what they can say. The state mostly publishes the statements as is. It doesn't fact-check the claims inside, so start with that caveat. Then add this. Not every major candidate is even in the guide. ABC 7 reported that major gubernatorial contenders, including Democrat Tom Steyer and Republican Steve Hilton, opted out. That comes back to Proposition 34, the ballot measure California voters passed, tying voter guide participation to certain campaign finance rules. So, skipping the guide can be a strategic money decision, not some clue that a candidate doesn't exist. And per the SF Chronicle, some statements that do appear are getting fresh scrutiny for potentially offensive content, which has reopened the question of what guardrails the state really has. Bottom line, the guide is useful for hearing a candidate's own framing. It is self-selected and unverified, so don't treat it like a neutral accounting.
So if a candidate skips the voter guide for financial strategy reasons, does that tell us anything meaningful about how they're running the campaign?
It tells you they made a deliberate trade-off, campaign finance flexibility over the guaranteed statewide distribution the guide gives them, which goes to roughly 23 million registered voters. Maybe that's savvy. Maybe it's a missed connection with lower information voters. As this moves toward November, treat the guide as one candidate-written data point. Cross-check it against independent reporting, and notice who chose not to show up. Here's what Planned Parenthood Affiliates of California is reporting. Planned Parenthood Affiliates of California endorsed Becerra for governor, and the framing is reproductive freedom champions, with abortion and gender-affirming care front and center. Note the date on the page, Tuesday, June 2nd. This is the primary endorsement. The interesting test is whether that champion language survives into a general where Becerra is up against a Republican, not a field of progressives.
And here's the thing that jumps out at me. Porter's own voter guide pitch was the anti-billionaire CEO fighter, going toe-to-toe with Trump. Same lane. She didn't advance. After the primary, that champion framing doesn't separate the Democrats anymore. It's the floor. Watch what Becerra actually does with the wealth tax on the November ballot. A banner graphic won't answer that.
Right. The endorsement is a statement of values. The vote share is the thing that's actually been counted.
If you're following statewide California politics, you might also like San Francisco politics and urbanism daily. City Hall, Muni, housing abundance, public safety, schools, and small business permitting. Find it wherever you listen to podcasts. We've put links to all the stories from today's episode in the show notes, so if something caught your ear, you can follow it there and read more. That's California Governor's Race for today. This is a Lantern podcast.